I'm Andrea, a passionate DEI advocate and consultant on a mission. Join me in each episode as we celebrate diversity, ignite conversations, and craft workplaces and educational institutions where everyone thrives. This podcast is my commitment to making a meaningful impact on the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So are you ready? Let's get Diversifused. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Get Diversifused podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Horton-Mericli, founder of Diversifuse DEI Consulting and a passionate DEI advocate and ally. This episode is all about disability inclusion and shaping DEI beyond the norm. My guest speaker today is Zoe Simmons. Zoe writes to make a difference in the world. As an award-winning journalist who's been published hundreds of times around the globe, Zoe uses the raw power of storytelling to capture hearts and minds, helping businesses, small and large, find their perfect words. When not running her copywriting and editing business, writing articles, or speaking at events, Zoe can be found writing books. She's been published in 6 already and working on her first book about her experiences as a disabled journalist and her hometown survival within the Black Summer bushfires. So she does reside in Australia, for those of you that don't know her. So welcome, Zoe, to the Get Diversifused podcast. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about your story?
Okay, well, as you may have just heard, I am a journalist. I also run my own copywriting business. I do speaking. I do lived experience advocacy. I basically do whatever I can to try and make a difference through my skills and my lived experience. Because I've been disabled my whole life. I'm autistic. I also live with a couple of chronic pain conditions and chronic illnesses. But it's not until a couple of years ago that I realized that was disabled, and like mental illness is disability as well. And we have this negative perception of disability. It's so stigmatized, like shameful, and it's just not okay because I'm not sure about the American statistics, but in Australia, 1 in 5 people are actually disabled, and a lot of people are invisibly disabled. And you know, our access needs matter, and there's so many barriers in society, and it's not spoken about, and it's really just not good enough because accessibility benefits everybody. And it's actually quite likely that you will become disabled in the future too, whether by accident, whether by sickness or age. Sooner or later, these accessibility things will benefit you. So it's really important to work on it now, and it shouldn't just have to affect you for you to care. It's pretty vital, and you know, it's the strong work of advocates in the past that have changed laws, and we need to keep fighting because it's not there yet. It's getting better, of course, but you know, even about diversity, people don't even think about disability, and it's not good enough. So I'm doing whatever I can to try and change that.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'm not sure of the statistics, but you had said in Australia it's about 1 in 5. I vaguely remember hearing something very similar on the US side. And there's so many that have been misdiagnosed or have not been diagnosed yet and are struggling through the day-to-day challenges that their invisible disability poses to them. So it's you're right. I mean, we're not where we need to be, and disability does tend to get pushed aside or forgotten about when it comes to DEI efforts. So a lot of DEI advocates have included the A as part of the acronym, so DEIA or DEIBA, because accessibility, as you said, it benefits everybody because we don't know what our future holds for us. And so if we work towards accessibility for all, it's just going to be so much easier if and when the time comes when like someone like me who doesn't identify as having a disability may become disabled in the future. But it is sorely needed accessibility, and we're just not there. There needs to be more laws and policies for individuals with disabilities. We have like the Individuals with Disability Act in the United States. I don't know if if Australia has something similar.
No, we have we're trying to get a Disability Act, as far as I'm aware, like from the Disability Royal Commission we just had, but we have the discrimination laws, but public places are supposed to be accessible, but no one like checks or cares, and even when it is accessible, it's ridiculous. The stories I can share.
Oh, I can only imagine some of the things, like some of the designs in buildings. Like I was just at my work, one of the buildings at where I work, and I was like, oh, this is wonderful. They have like the handle very low, and they had everything low, and to where somebody who might be in a wheelchair or has to use some kind of crutches or a walker can access the handles and the paper towels and everything, and the sinks. But then when I went to it was a one-stalled bathroom. When I turned, I was like, well, where's the lock? It was way up there. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, so everything is like accessible except for the lock. So
imagine if you're in a wheelchair or like a person of short stature, like
exactly. And it was one of the push ones, so it's, or not the twist one, sorry. So I was just like, oh my gosh, this is a major flaw in this door. Because if someone is in the middle of what they're doing, you don't want somebody walking in, So designs like that, and that's I wouldn't say that's a common thing around, but there's so many buildings that are not accessible, so many sidewalks and streets that they may have a ramp or something like that, but they're crumbling. Where I live, there's like in my neighborhood, there's no sidewalks. It's a walking neighborhood, a walking school district, and there's no sidewalks.
Which basically means wheelchair users have to drive on the road and risk getting hit. And also people yell at you for driving on the road. It's like, where else am I supposed to go? And like sometimes there aren't those curb cut things to get onto the path, or it's too small, or they put trees in the way, or people put those ridiculous e-scooters or e-bikes or bins, and it's just like no one ever thinks of it until you're in that situation. And that's really shitty, because when you're in that situation, if you have disabilities where you can't do anything else, like you can't move things out of the way, for example, like what are you supposed to do? You just have to, like, I guess, reverse and try and wait till you can find somewhere else to get off. I'm like, that's difficult.
Or right in the middle of the street. It's like, it's
so dangerous. Genuinely so dangerous. Yeah. Especially like slopes. I've had examples when I've been traveling and like my chair has tipped and like fallen, like there was a pole on the way, so the pole caught me, thankfully. But if it wasn't that, I could have been on the road sideways at night. So I probably would have been run over.
Oh, wow.
Like, goodness.
Wow. Wow. That's scary, actually. And there's times where, you're not with other people. So you're alone, and it's you're even more vulnerable than you normally are. We're all vulnerable, but you're more vulnerable then, and you do need help. And the best you can do is yell, "We help! How did you get out of that situation, if you don't mind me asking?
Honestly, I was like crying, and I think two random men happened to walk past, but it was like quite late after an event at night, and I was going back to my hotel, and I was so terrified because I was like, oh, I don't want to get murdered. Oh my God. Like being in a wheelchair, people might see you as a target. So like, especially if you're on the side. I did manage to like slide backwards safely and go enough, but I think then I got stuck trying to get on the road, and it was like, it didn't look that steep when I was trying to drive up it, and there was no other option because there was no footpath on the other side, and it was either that or the traffic. And I was like, well, I need to get back to my hotel.
So the event you were at, they didn't offer transportation for you to and from the hotel? No. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's something
that I got an award that night for diversity and inclusion too.
Oh my gosh. Oh wow. So it was a DEI event, and they didn't think of offering oh my goodness. Oh wow. Wow. Yeah, so that's a flaw in the event organizers planning, but hopefully you brought that to their attention. So or maybe if you haven't, I would, so they can think about that in the future when they plan future events, because uh, it's not really accessibility, but just transportation, safe transportation to and from a locality is very important, especially, I mean, especially if you're not from that area. You don't know anyone, and you don't know the city. So yeah, and you don't know if that neighborhood, is it a dangerous neighborhood? Is it a safe neighborhood?
I'm so scared. I was just like, oh, please don't murder me, anybody.
Oh man. I'm glad everything worked out though.
Me too.
So
thank goodness those were nice people that came across me, and not
yeah, because there's so many people that I wouldn't say there's so many people, but there are individuals that will look the other way, and it's or cross the street because they don't want to be put in a situation. Yeah, exactly. Wow. So speaking of like the event organizers and stuff and organizations, how can organizations, I'm going to go to our questions here. First question: how can organizations ensure that disability is adequately represented and included in their DEI initiatives? And what steps can they take to address ableism and promote accessibility?
Okay, so many things. But for starters, you have to have disabled people involved. Like that's like, and not just like, I know people use the term lived experience a lot, and that is important, but the person actually has to be disabled. It can't be like, oh, my sister's disabled. I mean, I know that's like, you know, that's still valid. I'm not saying that's not a bad thing, but it needs to be disabled people involved, because you experience things and you understand it in a way that no one else can understand it. I mean, like, for example, I have lots of friends that come with me to events. So they see a lot of the things. They probably could advocate pretty well, but not the same as the person who actually, you know, exists. So you could do so many things. You could bring in and co-design with multiple disabled people. Also remembering that one disabled person isn't enough. You can't just have one token disabled person. There's so much variety in disability, and you know, there's so much privileges as well, and you need to make sure that there's diversity in disability as well, like not just privileged rich white people, because
yes,
again, those are very different experiences to like someone that's you know, from a poor socioeconomic background, someone that's person of color, someone that's queer, someone that's trans. All these identities are really important to include, and you know, different disabilities, like people who are blind, people who are deaf, people who are of short stature, people who use wheelchairs or walkers, people who are autistic, people with, I don't know, PTSD, mental illnesses.
Thank you for bringing that up.
There's so many variations of this too. So you need to make sure you have a wide variety of disabilities and that they're represented. And, you know, you could have co-design, you could have, you know, other groups, you could have surveys, you could hire a disabled accessibility consultant. That is really important. But just make sure you do it. Like it's a vital part of diversity and inclusion. It will make a huge difference, not only for you, but for everyone. And, you know, having an accessible workplace contributes to psychological safety, because you feel like this is a space for you. And you don't notice that unless you haven't had it. So it's really, really, really important. And like, if you don't have it, disabled people literally can't get in the door. And
yeah, you're right.
It's
get the services they need or get to work.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. Like it happens every single day, these accessibility issues. Like it would be a full-time job to have feedback all the time. So if you are proactively learning about this and consulting with disabled people, and, you know, genuinely trying your best and not just being like, oh, I don't have to do that because I don't know anyone that's disabled. You probably do.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you know, learn about ableism, learn about what it means, learn about stigma, actually actively work on this, and, you know, follow disabled advocates, follow diverse disabled advocates who talk about these things. Because ableism is real and we internalize it as well. Like it was a big journey for me to unlearn my internalized ableism and be like, oh, I'm not disabled enough to use a mobility aid, for example. That's one that was really hard for me. But if it helps, you use it. So, you know, we need to change these ways of thinking that disability is bad or disability is less. We should distance ourselves from disability as much as possible, because it's a natural part of the human existence. It's always been around and always will be. It's not a bad thing. We just have to learn about it, include it, same as any other level of diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And so as you were talking, it brought up two questions, two totally different questions that weren't on the prepared questions for you. But so you had said that it took you a little while to use an accessibility device, and I know that with many individuals who may not have used an accessibility device, whether it be a wheelchair or a cane or crutches or a walker or prosthetics or something, or hearing aids, or even glasses, it's it can be, you think about that stigma. You don't want to be treated differently, and your pride, self pride starts getting in the way. And because you don't want to be treated differently, you don't want people to see you as different. And how did you overcome that to where, like, and what advice would you give somebody who might be struggling with that right now?
It was really, really hard. I'd been looking at mobility aids for a little while because, with my disabilities, chronic pain is something that consumes my life, as well as, fatigue and things called post-exertional malaise, which means that my energy levels are not the same as someone who doesn't have these conditions. Like, even really, really small things can drain me. Like, even this conversation, I will probably be dead after.
Oh,
But it's worth it though to get the message out.
yeah.
But it's really hard to accept these things, especially if you've known different. So like the first thing I did, I went to a chemist one day and I was looking at the walking sticks and I saw this pretty one that had like pink roses on it. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to try it. And I was like, oh, wow, that actually helps. And I was really anxious because I had like older people staring at me, like they will probably need it on mobility aid and, like, oh, we shouldn't do that. Like that weird mentality, which I understand. I know it's passed down from this idea that disability should be hidden. Like I'm pretty sure in America, you guys had a law that you couldn't be disabled in public until like the 70s.
I maybe we did. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure.
Check that
I don't
out.
think Australia has that, but yeah, I was like, what? So like this stigma runs deep.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I started using it, I was so anxious, but I was like, you know what? If it helps, I use it. But I know the first time I used a wheelchair, for example, I was at a gallery with a friend and I was in so much pain. Like every step was just so agonizing. And I was like, you know what? I might ask them if they actually have one. And I cried happy tears that night because I was able to move around without pain. I could just enjoy myself. And feeling that difference, I was like, you know what? No. And it is still hard for me. I do have, a variety of mobility aids now. Like I have a walking stick for short distances or when I'm feeling good. I have my walker for when I want to still walk, but have that support and a seat whenever I need it. I have my electric wheelchair, which is when I go out to events or things because manual wheelchairs are very difficult because it's hard to feel and nothing's flat. I do still feel that anxiety with myself, like, oh, I'm not disabled enough to use those, but also no one else gets to say that. It's, only and if it helps, you use it. That's what I keep repeating. If it helps, you use it. Doesn't matter. If it makes life less painful for you, if it means you have more energy to do other things that you need to do, if it, means that you don't have as much risk and you can enjoy life more, you use it. It doesn't matter if it's a small thing, like it will add up and, you just use it. Like you're allowed to, no matter what. No matter if you have a diagnosis, it doesn't matter because, healthcare is ridiculous. I'm sure any American listeners, oh my gosh, I can't believe expensive. That. I would die in America, I think.
It's expensive, yeah. Just the prescriptions alone, it's the pharma, it's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, the money you have to pay for the insurance and then you still have to pay on top. It's like, oh my gosh. So but I love that you said when that you think about it, it's like if it makes you feel better, do it. Because I went to physical therapy school and there's so many people that we saw as patients that refused to use their devices, and they were making their conditions worse. And so they were progressing it so much faster and making it worse than it would have been if they were using the devices, because that that pride gets and that fear of being stigmatized does prevent them from using it. And it's like, oh, I don't need that. You know, I can do it. I can do it. But it's almost like that cortisone shot. Like people with low back pain, doctors love getting that cortisone shot. It just masks the pain. The cause, of what is causing that pain is still there. You just don't feel it temporarily. So it's like, what are the other options? Maybe not surgery, but there are other options you could do to help alleviate that pain and make you feel a little bit more comfortable throughout your day, so you can have more energy and do the things you love to do with the people you love to be around with. So I love that you.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, no worries.
Even thinking about like wearing glasses, like, yeah, if you wear glasses, you might be able to like struggle through and read, but that would cause eye strain. It would cause pain. It might give you headaches later. It's like, well, what is the cost? Like, for example, it's no different to wearing glasses. It's something that helps you live better. It's no different to I don't know, if you're wearing high heels and you know it's really sore and like, oh, I'm going to put on flat shoes. Like, it's just a choice that makes you more comfortable, and you look at, you know, what's the cost, and, you know, people harming themselves because they don't want to be seen as disabled. That says a lot about how we view disability as a society, and it's ridiculous, which is why I'm like, you know what? No, I will be seen. I will talk about it. I don't care about your stigma. I am going to do it. And, you know, I have put like fairy lights on my mobility aids now. I'm gonna glue gun. I'm gonna put like flowers and stuff all over because people stare anyway. So like, you know, show that young people use mobility aids. You know, a wide variety of people can use it. Of course, I know you know, a big barrier is expense. But a cane isn't that expensive. Like I bought mine from $20 from the chemist, and I know that is still a lot of money for some people. But you know, people sell them secondhand, and there are options as well. Potentially.
There are organizations. Like, so I'm so sorry. What?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no.
I don't know what things like in America, but like, you know, if it would help you, please use it. Please don't feel like you're not allowed to. And if you know someone in your life that should, be like, hey, maybe you should. You know, it's all right.
Yeah. And make sure they get the proper training on how to use it properly. Like for crutches or a cane, like get it sized properly. Because if it's the wrong size, it's not going to make them feel better. It's going to make it worse if it's too high or too low, or and the crutches too, like it could, if they're too high or too low, they could occlude the blood vessels there and the nerves. So so make sure, like, if you get assisted devices, you go to a professional to get them sized properly, and quick training on how to use them to get around the world. But I was going to say, in the United States, I don't know about Australia, and I'm sure other countries too. We have community organizations that people can donate their devices to, like if they get crutches or canes from their medical professionals that's, you know, after surgery and they don't need them. They only need them for a certain amount of time. They can donate them to these organizations. So people who are low income and do struggle with the cost, they can receive them and get the assistance they need to get around their world. But also individuals who and I apologize for this, but individuals who pass away, if they had any devices, wheelchairs, crutches, canes, even glasses, you know, just general reading glasses and stuff, not prescription, but general reading glasses that you can purchase over the counter, donate those, because there are people that can use them, from individuals who may be homeless to individuals who are low income. So there's a lot of organizations out there that, well, not a lot, but there are organizations out there in your communities that will take these devices, and you can give them to the Goodwills too, but Goodwill will sell them at very low cost, which is great. But there are other organizations that will give them to individuals who need them for free. So, yeah. So in that, the original question I asked you about what steps can they take to address ableism and promote accessibility? I love that you said having a diverse array of individuals with disabilities, because just like people of color and all, no one story is the same. Everybody has different perspectives. Everyone has different experiences. Everyone has different struggles. So it's like someone's coming to me. It's like, well, you're Latina. What about the people? They might ask me a question about Puerto Rico or Colombia. I was like, I'm not Colombian. I'm not Puerto Rican. You cannot. Just because I'm a Hispanic does not mean that I know all countries that speak. We all have different experiences, different cuisines, even languages, even though it falls under Spanish. But I'm glad that you said that, because that is very important. But as you were talking, I always wondered this, and forgive my ignorance if it is an ignorant question. But I would like your input on this. So when organizations are and community, whether it's an educational institution from K through 12 system, or I don't know if it's called K through 12 in Australia, or higher education, to community organizations, to workplaces, when they're developing their fire escape plan, emergency escape plans, they shut down the elevators. You have to use the stairwells. I know one organization I worked at, there was, so that we had an individual coworker who was in an electronic wheelchair, and he could not walk and at all. So he was in the wheelchair. He needed to be in the wheelchair. So he had assigned people to help him if he needed it with the restroom and also with the escape plans. But in your experience, what should organizations be thinking about when they develop these escape plans when they are on multiple floors, because the elevators are shut down and individuals in wheelchairs, crutches, individuals with ambulatory issues struggle, and sometimes it's impossible for them to go down by themselves. So what, in your experience, what would you suggest to organizations, just out of curiosity? And I'm sorry if I put you on the spot, but
well, I'm not an expert in emergency evacuation protocols, but I did write an article for an organization about personal emergency something plan. I can't remember exactly what the acronym was. Basically, just being aware of people that have disabilities in your organization, in your building, and what supports they'll need, making sure that that's actually, thought about. I guess it's really difficult when you have a bigger building, but maybe there's like a window and someone can get, I don't know, a fire truck or something. Again, not my my specialty. At least just being aware of people and like what they need. Knowing that exists, not just leaving, because like in some bushfires here that happened a couple of years ago in Australia, the evacuation center we were at, there were stairs to get up the top to get the food and hear the information. Wow. So it's like, well,
that like I can smell it.
You don't even think about disabled people existing. So at least being aware, at least knowing, and also consulting an expert in that area, because I am not.
Okay, that makes sense. And also, as you said, talk to your employees who have disabilities, and maybe the best floor for them to be on isn't the 30-something floor. Talk with them, see what they would like. That would be include them in the plan, in their plan.
And not just
Cool.
assuming that you'll be able to know that someone's disabled, because a lot of people wouldn't disclose it because they're afraid of stigma. So I
Yes,
guess also having
yes.
that information communicated, so in case someone,
Hmm.
does have ability struggles, but they don't want to tell people,
It's
um,
true.
what they could
It's
do.
true.
Or at least they
It's
know
true.
the plan.
Yeah. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because I my new job is in HR, and there are so many people that have a fear of disclosure, even not just disabilities, but even like race and ethnicity. But when it comes, but disabilities is individuals who have any kind of disability do tend to not disclose that more often than the other questions that are optional questions that are asked for demographics. And so it is difficult for employers to know who may need extra assistance or accommodations, or 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 extra time with stuff, but if they don't disclose. But that's something that organizations, just to me, need to think about, and just assume that everybody has a disability and think of it that way, because that's going to be all inclusive. You want to create safe spaces for individuals to maybe eventually disclose to their supervisor or their team, to where they know that they won't be, or even the higher ups, HR, to where they know they won't be um, treated differently, or shamed or stigmatized or something. So safe spaces are very important.
Yeah, and you
Um,
could, show that by maybe hiring specifically disabled people who are, proudly disabled, and putting your money where your mouth is and showing it, because
mhm.
the job unemployment rate for disabled people is ridiculously high because people aren't willing to make
Yes.
these basic adjustments that could
Mm-hmm.
make a huge difference not only to the disabled community but to everybody. Like simple things like, for
Yes.
example, work from home, flexible hours, part-time
Yes.
work. Like that benefits
Mm-hmm.
so many people. And all these
Yes.
things, just it's such a battle, even for basic things. And
Mm-hmm.
I think if you are running a business or an organization, maybe, hire some specifically disabled people and, show that and make that be the change that you want in your workplace, and
Mm-hmm.
value our lived experience, because that is, you can't get that anywhere else, and it's so
Mm-hmm.
powerful, it's so important, and it benefits so many groups of people. It benefits, mum that has a pram and is trying to push that and get it into a
Mm-hmm.
building, or like, someone, so many things. The worker that's trying to push a trolley or something, and I
Yeah.
don't know, trying to,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like workplace flexibility, but wheelchair accessibility, for example. That's one basic small thing that has so many impacts, and there are so many things you can
Mm-hmm.
do. And there's this mentality that oh, I'm not going to change because it's the way it's always been, and you just have to fit into this area. But like, who does that work for, really? Just the most
Exactly.
privileged people? That's not
Yeah.
fair. Let's
Exactly,
change
because
it.
that mold, yeah, it is changing, and every country is getting more diverse, which is beautiful. And because air travel has made it so convenient to get to different places and educate, for higher education, for work and everything. So our world is becoming more a more globalized workforce, and um, with that, that means it's more diverse in all aspects, not just race and ethnicity, but individuals with disabilities as well, and of course veterans and LGBTQ plus. But these are things we definitely need to think about when we are creating our initiatives and policies and procedures, and our strategic plans. So, what are some common misconceptions or stereotypes about disability that hinder genuine inclusion, and how can we challenge and dismantle these biases?
My gosh, there's so many. I think one is like a very basic one is not assuming someone's needs or disabilities by looking at them. Like, for
Mm-hmm.
example, a lot of disabilities are invisible. So someone that, might be autistic and have other issues may need those access needs, but
Mm-hmm.
they may not, look like they need it, so you won't offer it to them. Like I, for example, probably don't look or sound like I would need accessibility for that, but I do, and it benefits. And just because you're talking to one person at one time and they are able to exist
Yeah.
doesn't mean they can always do that. And also, if someone does have a disability that you can see, not judging them off that, they're still a person. Like, don't
Yeah.
baby them like they're still a
Yeah.
human being. Just treat them like a human. Wild idea there, but literally just treat them like a human being and don't talk to the
Yes.
person with them. Oh my goodness. Like, please, if you have a disabled person
Yeah.
and they might have a friend or a carer nearby, don't talk to the carer. Like, I've gone out with my friends so many times and they'll talk to my friends, not me. And it's like, excuse me?
Oh,
I'm here.
wow.
Look at me, speak to
Yeah.
me. Or they
Yeah.
ignore you all the time too because they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Also, like, people that just cheer for the most ridiculous things. Like, I was in Mecca once. I'm not sure if you guys have Mecca there. I'm assuming probably because it's a big beauty brand, but it's like Sephora. But
Oh, okay. Yeah.
okay, maybe not. But yeah, it's like
Well,
Sephora.
we might there. I'm a little older, so I know I've heard of Sephora, but I don't know all the makeup brands out there. So Mecca, yeah, it sounds familiar, but I'm not sure if we have it in the city I live in. But that doesn't mean it's not some in other places in the U.S. So.
Either way, like, I was in this shop and I like reversed in my wheelchair and turned around and the sales assistant like clapped at me and was like, "Oh, so good." And I was like, what? Would you would
Oh
you
my
clap and cheer on anybody else for turning around? Like, oh my goodness. Like, I know she probably thought like, oh wow, look at this disabled person out and turning around and living. Like,
and not
huh?
knocking anything down. It's like,
I
oh
do know.
wow. Oh, I do too. That's just because I'm a klutz. But it's like
Have electric powered wheelchair that makes me more.
like, if there's a hole, I'll find it.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Broken bones like that. So,
oh yeah. Yeah, when you were saying the talking to you, like if you're talking to me, talk to me, look at me.
yes.
That happens so much to like a lot of individuals who are from marginalized populations, especially language learners who may or may not need an interpreter, sorry. And that's one of the things I tell people is like, don't speak to the interpreter. Don't look at the interpreter and totally ignore the person that you're talking to, like I'm pretending I'm looking at the interpreter. But it's you still talk to the person. The interpreter is supposed to be invisible for the most part, because the conversation is with the person, your client or patient or the person you're interviewing, not with the interpreter. So
yes. Like, again, wild concept. Treat the person that you're talking to like a person.
Human-centeredness. I love it. Yes. And actually treat everybody like a person, because they are.
Yes.
We all want to be accepted for who we are and what we bring to the table, our experiences, our knowledge, our personalities, so we can be our authentic selves. We shouldn't have to mold ourselves to what society at large thinks is the norm, because as you said, the norm has changed. The norm historically has been white Anglo-Saxon males, which is what a lot of medical studies were on, white Anglo-Saxon males. That's why a lot of females are getting diagnosed with neurodiverse disorders and mental health disorders later in life, because they were either discounted, as, oh, they're just, being, hormonal, or they were misdiagnosed. Like, I don't know how many friends of mine are now being diagnosed in their late 30s and 40s as being on the autistic spectrum. Autistic spectrum, is that the correct word?
Autistic.
Autistic, yeah. And like, it just sounded weird coming out of my mouth. Because a lot of them were diagnosed previously with bipolar disorder or depression or some other mental health disorder, and it wasn't. And a lot the ones that are finally getting the right diagnosis, it's like a light has come on. It's like, oh my gosh, everything makes sense now.
Yeah.
All their struggles in school, all their, and in the workplace, and yeah, it's
Yeah, I was only diagnosed at 27, so that
oh
was
wow.
last year. Wow. Year before? I don't
Wow.
know. So like I went through my whole life not knowing, and I was like, wow, this makes sense. But it's also really sad to look back because it's like, wow, this would have really helped. But because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people who are feminine are really good at masking. Not everyone can
Yeah.
mask, of course. Like that is a privilege.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't realize it, and you don't realize it's not normal. Like I thought
Yeah.
everyone was just like that. I thought everyone had these autistic traits, but no. But like I'm reading a book at the moment called I Don't by Clementine Ford, and she's an Australian feminist writer, but this section I'm reading at the moment is all about how like women's health has often been through the view of men, and like even like great philosophers and great medical people have often just said women's pain and symptoms are just hysteria, and like
Yes.
that still happens. It's like medical
Mm-hmm.
gaslighting, and so many people with a uterus can't get a diagnosis. They won't get their pain heard.
Yeah.
They get misdiagnosed. They won't get diagnosed because they present differently. Shock to a white
Yeah.
man. Who would have thought?
Yep.
um
Yep.
but
Yep.
yeah, it's just ridiculous.
It
And that
is.
still is pervasive in the medical system. It's pervasive in our, legal system and all these things that
Education system. Yeah.
it needs to
It
like
does. It
every
needs to
angle.
stop, and it needs to change. And people need to listen to their student, listen to their patient, listen to their friend, listen to their family member, because they know how they're feeling. They know what they're experiencing. And so as you said, they don't want to be told or think that, oh, this happens to everybody, but that's what they're getting told all the time. Like, oh, that you're just going through a stage, or you're just, being hysterical, like Sigmund Freud with him and his hysteria. But it's the bedside manner really needs to change because the differences in patient treatment between males and females, and those of color and those of not color, those who actually come in with disabilities to a doctor. There's stereotypes. Oh, you're just being lazy, or oh, you're just making it up. You just want to get out of going to work, or it's all these different things that the negative biases, implicit biases, take over, and active listening stops, and patient's bedside manner is, and not even just patient bedside manner, but as I said, in educational institutions and workplace organizations, it's lacking. It's starting to get better, as I think you had said a little bit before, but we're still not anywhere close to where we need to be, and creating these spaces of belonging and feeling valued. So yeah. Mm-hmm. So in your experience, what are some of key barriers faced by individuals with disabilities in accessing employment, education, and public spaces, and how can organizations work to eliminate these barriers?
I mean, I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but one, making sure your workplace is accessible, physically accessible is a good start. Like, but also like considering different disabilities, like someone who's blind, someone who's deaf, someone who's of short stature, someone who can't walk far, someone who I don't know, might be really anxious and not know which way to go, like having clear instructions, things like that. And in terms of the neurodivergent people and autistic people, there's a lot of in neurotypical communication, there's a lot of like reading between the lines, and like autistic people generally can't do that. So just ask for what you actually want. And I know that sounds ridiculously
like
simple.
Get to the point. Yeah.
And like be clear with it, like, is let people know, is this something you need to address now? When do you need to address it? Like what time? Like actually, tell people these things, because otherwise I'm just like, I don't no, I'll do what I think, but I might be wrong and then I'll get in trouble. But like a lot
Yeah.
of autistic people, I feel, at least people I've spoken to and in my experiences, you get really afraid of being misunderstood or misunderstanding because you've experienced those things where people are like, oh well, and like the unemployment rate for autistic people is, I think, I mean, sorry, I haven't double checked this, but I'm pretty sure from an article I just wrote, it's 6 times the non-autistic unemployment rate in Australia, at least. So, like, that's
Wow.
significant, and you know, we're more likely to be in so many bad situations, especially because you
Mhm.
don't always recognize the red flags.
Yeah.
It's so important to make people, you know, feel like they can just be themselves, and you know that it's okay if you're having like sensory overload, like having a sensory space people can go to, but like setting it up
Yes.
properly. So
Mhm.
actually getting, you know, autistic organizations, actually, sorry, autistic led organizations, because there are a lot of like Autism Speaks, for example,
Mhm.
you know, places that don't actually support autistic people and places that just want
Oh.
to, you know, eradicate autism through research. Like I know a lot of places
Oh,
are
wow.
like, I'm not specifically saying that, but I know a lot of
Mhm.
autistic organizations are working towards research basically to be like, oh, how do we reduce autism? It's like, excuse me, how about we make it more inclusive? Thank you very much. Like,
Yeah.
be fixed. We don't need to have this behavioral therapy. We need
Mhm.
inclusive workplaces where we can just accept that people have different brains, people have different ways of communicating, and it's
Mhm.
all valid. And you know that if you, that some people do have sensory overload, and
Yeah. I had
having a
my best friend's daughter is very sensory sensitive. So,
yeah, and understanding its
yeah.
dynamics. A person might be able
Mhm.
to handle it one day, but not another. And you know, so many other factors like how did you sleep? Have you eaten? What's going on in your life? All those
Mhm.
things control what you can handle. That's true for anybody.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I think workplaces in particular are having, you know, autistic and disabled
Mhm.
consultants, I think would be a really
I
good
love
start,
that.
and actually
Yeah.
genuinely working towards inclusion, not being like, oh, you know, we'll just do this, or making people have to
Mhm.
fight for adjustments. But also, like, a lot of people don't know what adjustments they would need to make
Mhm.
the workplace better. So, like, if you've never been
Yeah.
asked before, you won't know. It is a lot of trial and error, but I guess just being willing to learn, willing to look it up, willing to talk to someone, and be like, okay, what are you facing? Because everyone's different, and that's
Mhm.
okay, that's good, that's great. Like
Yeah.
if we're all normal, and sorry, not normal, if we're all the same, you know.
Yeah, we are. We are. And it's like we breathe the same air, we bleed the same, type of, I mean, if we get cut, we bleed. And it's just we're all made of the same material. So I loved what you had said. It never dawned on me. And I know a lot of airports are having like sensory rooms, and a lot of organizations are thinking of different like inclusive type of practices when it comes to different rooms, like the lactation rooms and the relaxation rooms. But the relaxation rooms are not the sensory
No.
rooms. So that is a one room that I think a lot of organizations don't think about. And as I said, I didn't dawn on me until you said. I was like, oh my gosh. um, it's great for community places to have that, but workplaces need to have that too. And
Yeah.
also, as you had said earlier, offering those flexible work options, because you may be fine one day, but another day you may, you don't want to get out of the house, and you're not um you're not 100% that day. So it's uh having those flexible options is very important for for success and employee engagement, employee happiness and well-being, general well-being for everybody. And but I love that sensory room. I think organizations really need to have it, because even individuals who don't have a neurodiverse diagnosis can benefit from those rooms, because they are relaxing, they are calming, and sometimes you just need to get away from the day-to-day stuff, and just have a place where you can calm, collect yourself.
Not to mention that there'd be a lot of neurodivergent people who don't realize they're neurodivergent. And like,
Exactly.
you don't
Yeah.
need a diagnosis to, be valid
Exactly.
as an autistic or neurodivergent person. But,
Mm-hmm.
even when people have when organizations and places have these spaces, they're often not good. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I went to an event, again, an
Oh,
event where I won a diversity award. And I asked for a sensory.
congratulations.
Thank you. But
You're-
I went to the sensory space and it
yeah.
was a storage room that you couldn't even turn off the lights. And it was where everyone was just storing their bags and getting changed. And like you couldn't close the
Oh
door.
my
And like
gosh.
I was panicking, like, because it was so loud.
Oh,
Like, so I was right next to the speakers, like at this event. And
oh
like,
wow.
talking, and I was like, I just need to get away. Oh my God. And so like, I
Oh,
just zoomed to the other side and I was like trying to find the
yeah.
sensory space, panicking. And like, it wasn't signed either. So I didn't know where it was. And like, when I got there, you couldn't even turn off the lights. I was just like literally turned around in a corner trying to
Oh,
breathe.
wow.
I hope no one got dressed
No,
in a
no,
suit.
that was sensory. That was the sensory overload room, not the sensory. It's like, oh wow. But
You can't just
as you were talking
walk.
about with turning off the lights, like there's so many people like myself that suffer from migraines that you just need to go to a place where you can turn off the lights and just, relax a little bit. Yeah. So yeah, oh my gosh. Wow. And so if an organization does decide to put, which I root for them, I want them to like put a sensory room in their building. And I think that they should, like, if there are multiple floors, they should have more than one, like maybe every other floor, every 3 floors or something like that, but make it accessible to all the employees. They need to bring in, as you had said, a consultant who is neurodiverse and is disabled, because to get
Yes.
their input, because we can assume, but assumptions are usually wrong. And we might get things right up to a point, but there's things that we don't think about, not everybody can think about. And so hiring a consultant is very important when it comes to things like that. So last question, how can storytelling, and I think storytelling is very powerful in all aspects. So how can storytelling and personal narratives be leveraged to amplify the voices of individuals with disabilities and advocate for meaningful change in society and the workplace?
I mean, storytelling is so powerful. It's my life. I've always loved stories and the power of words, but not just written
Yes.
words, spoken words. And there's so many ways of doing storytelling. But I think the most important part of it, and what allows it to make a difference, is it shows you perspectives that you may not have ever encountered before. Like, you don't know what it's like to be disabled, but you read an article by someone who is disabled and like, wow, that's eye-opening. Maybe you don't know experience of being a trans person or a person of color, and you read those articles and you're like, wow. And especially when these identities intersect, because they obviously do. No one lives in a vacuum. It's always been a weird term to me. Like, of course we don't live in an.
Their intersectionality. Yeah.
Sorry, just like taking things literally. Just a joke there. But sorry, I forgot the question. I got.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah. So, how can storytelling and personal narratives be
yes.
leveraged to amplify the voices?
So I think that's so powerful. That's all I do with it's a lot of what I do with my journalism is to show these perspectives, to raise awareness of these things, to smash the stigma and to create change, because you can't change what you don't know about. So we need to amplify these stories. We need to amplify these voices and diverse voices, and not just one tokenistic voice or something. Like having actually like a group of people with all these different experiences and showing these things and showing why they matter. And then the more diversity you have in representation, the more you see yourself, the more that impacts other areas. Like also then being like, oh, seeing disabled people and diverse people in leadership positions, in the business community, in, all these spaces. And it will start if we just start talking about it and sharing more and coming from a place of, hey, we don't want to make people feel guilty, just that there are lots of people that historically have not been seen. And, we would like to be seen, and it's not about attacking people who are privileged and have those privileges. About saying, hey, we all want to come together, we all want to be seen, and everyone deserves that. And I think the only people that don't get that are the people who have always been represented.
Yeah,
So
because they don't think about, as you said, it's like, oh, isn't it always been like this? It's like, for you,
no.
maybe. Yeah, it's
And once you notice these things, you will notice them more and be like, hey, actually, we should have diversity. Hey, wow, there's only one token person of color on this thing. That's really shitty. How
yeah.
about we change that? Hey, there's only one, oh no, disabled people. Let's change that.
Yep.
It's so powerful, and I truly believe in its power to create change because I have seen it, and even if it's just for one person, like I write to try and make the world a better place, or at least someone's world. And like, for example, my articles about using mobility aids, I've had so many people come up to me or message me and say that I'm the reason they use mobility aids now, and that means so much to me. Like that makes me want to cry with like, oh wow, I'm so glad that me sharing my struggles, and I always don't feel like I'm good enough or something, but I talk and share anyway because I think it is powerful. And even if you don't think your story is enough, I think it's it is important to speak out, especially if you have differing experiences, because your voice matters no matter who you are, no matter what experience you have. People always like, oh, I'm not enough, but you are, and everyone's stories matter. So recognizing the power that they have is powerful.
Yeah, I agree. It's like, everybody has a story, everybody has experiences and struggles that they've gone through. And where imposter syndrome starts coming, it's like, oh, we don't think anything of it, or we think that, oh, we're not good enough because we don't have a certificate, or we don't have a degree, or we don't have a certain status in society. Like, oh, no one's gonna listen to me. But everybody's story is so important, because if it can impact one individual, and the chances of it doing that are great, then it's worth telling your story. And you don't know like where it will lead you once you start telling your story. And it also, as you said, it opens up people's eyes. Like one of the consulting strategies I do is intergroup dialogue, and it's basically facilitated conversations between different groups, and crucial conversations, uncomfortable conversations that are basically storytelling, because people don't realize until they hear a story from somebody that sometimes they often know, are familiar with, or something like that. It's like, really, you've done, it's like you've overcome, that happened to you, and that still happens to you, and I never knew that. And it becomes personal to them, and it just opens up their eyes, and helps mitigate biases. It helps them recognize their own biases that they have, and society's biases that are still out there, and prejudices and discrimination that are still very alive today. And it's
racism, ableism, sexism, ageism, all the isms.
Yep.
Transphobia, homophobia. A lot of these things have been internalized for a lot of people, and you may think, oh, I'm a good person, but that doesn't mean you don't have these biases that have just been put into you by a world that's run by the most privileged and not always great people, and including diverse voices. So you have to address that and accept, oh, hey, I might be a good person, I might be trying, but it is possible I may have ableism, it is possible I may have thoughts that are racist, and like you have to address that. You have to be like, okay, that doesn't make me a bad person. Like I, for example, try and learn as much as I can about people of color and like their experiences, and it's just wild when you start like reading books and stuff. It's like, what the hell? Because we don't learn this and like the mainstream thing, but that's the only like accepting that uncomfortable space where you're learning about race, where you're learning about disability, where you're learning about LGBTQIA plus. That is the only way that you're actually going to create change. And I know it's a scary place to be in. It's an uncomfortable place, but it's think about how uncomfortable it is for the people that have those identities, and how we can make it better.
I couldn't have said that better myself. Well said. It's like, because the more we recognize and open up our eyes, the more of an ally and advocate we can be to use our platforms of privilege, of whatever platform that may be on, or platforms that may be on, because we all have some sort of platforms of privilege, and we need to use them, and to help others, with to help mitigate and hopefully eventually eliminate these prejudice and racist acts. People are always going to have their implicit bias thoughts, but it's how they respond to them, how they act is what's important. So
because we can create change. We've shown that in human history. So
yes,
why don't we just be real, accept the challenges, and be like, okay, what can we do to make it better, rather than being like, oh, I'm being attacked or something. I don't know, privileged white dudes that might be like, oh, I'm not going to look at that. It's like, well, maybe try.
and included in a conversation or something, like tidbits and stuff, and it's there's just a long way to go, and I'm so glad that you came on to my podcast, Get Diversifused, today. So before we go into the key takeaways, how can people get a hold of you if they want to invite you to their I guess you can speak to the podcast or to a speaking event, or if they want to reach out to you to write something about their organization, or whatever it may be, or maybe they just want to connect with you?
Oh, well, firstly, I would love that. But I am on pretty much all the social media platforms. You can probably just Google Zoe Simmons journalist and I'll come up. But I'm on Instagram as @something_beginning_with_Z. I'm on, I think that's my TikTok as well. I'm also on Twitter as it begins with Z, and Zoe Simmons journalist on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn. My TikTok's not very good. Please don't judge me, especially any younger listeners. I'm a millennial that's trying. But yeah, I would love to connect with anyone and help however I can. And we rise by lifting others. Let's all connect and do our best to make a difference, and make the world a better place.
I agree. So I will, for my listeners, I will be putting Zoe's contact information on her social media sites on one of the last slides of our podcast when it is released on June 6th. I'll also be putting her contact information in the summary of the podcast as well. So let's talk about some key takeaways from our conversation today. So Zoe and I talked about representation matters. We talked about the importance of including disability in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And we talked about how the lack of representation and accessibility, I can never say that word, accessibility perpetuates stigma and ableism, and why genuine inclusion is essential for diversity efforts. We talked about intersectionality and disability. We talked about the intersectionality of disability with other identities such as race, gender, and sexuality. And we talked about the unique challenges faced by individuals with disabilities from diverse backgrounds and the importance of addressing these intersectional issues in DEI work. We talked about combating inaccessibility. We talked about the pervasive nature of inaccessibility in society and its impact on individuals with disabilities. And we talked about some strategies for creating more inclusive spaces, events, and processes that accommodate the needs of everyone, regardless of disability. We talked about amplifying disability voices, and how storytelling can be a powerful tool for breaking down stigma and creating change. And we talked about the role of disabled individuals like Zoe in advocating for disability rights and promoting genuine inclusion through their lived experiences and narratives. So some possible next steps for you listeners: educate yourself on disability rights, accessibility, and inclusion practices through resources such as books, articles, and online courses. I will be listing I Don't by Clementine Ford as one of the resources on our resource slide. Advocate for disability inclusion in your workplace, school, or community by raising awareness, promoting accessible policies and practices, and amplifying the voices of individuals with disabilities. Engage in conversations with individuals who are disabled and disability advocacy organizations to learn more about their experiences and priorities and how you can support their efforts for genuine inclusion. Take action to make your spaces and events more accessible by implementing accommodations such as wheelchair ramps, captioning services, and sensory-friendly environments. And challenge ableism and stereotypes by actively listening to and learning from disabled voices and advocating for representation and equity in all aspects of life. Are there any other possible next steps that you can think of for our listeners today, Zoe?
I think you did a great job with that, but I think just, trying, you won't always be perfect, but just try. And also following diverse disabled people online is one really simple, easy way. Just get your social media feed to be a bit more diverse and follow people who are advocating and support our work and amplify these voices. That has a huge impact. So even little bits count. You don't have to do it all in one day because we're all tired. We all have struggles. Just doing a little bit when you can, honestly.
I think that's a great suggestion. So yeah, follow, look at the people you follow on social media and start including those that actually are advocates for DEI and disability and voices, and support their work. Yes, comment please. On their posts.
Yeah, help the algorithm like us.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, Zoe, for being on my podcast today. Listeners, as I said, this episode is going to air on June 6th. So if you're listening to it, it's already June 6th or after. Our episodes are released every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is New York time. So take a listen to our next episode. And feel free to comment on our episodes and give suggestions for future episode topics. With that, I will let you guys go today. I hope you guys stay diversifused and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.
Okay.
Want to be a guest speaker on the Get Diversifused podcast? I'm on the lookout for guests, so if you're passionate about DEI and would like to share your unique insights, experiences, or success stories, I want to hear from you. If you're a fellow podcaster who's passionate about DEI, let's swap the mic and amplify each other's voices. If you're interested in being a guest, reach out to me at Andrea@Diversifuse.com and I'll send you the link to our guest interest form. Hope to hear from you soon. Remember, stay diversifused. Now go out there and make a difference. And as always, for more strategies on building inclusive workplaces and communities, check out Diversifuse. We're here to guide you on your DEI journey. Make sure to visit our website at diversifuse.com and follow us on social media for the latest happenings, blog posts, tips, and events.